Hello there, and welcome to Season 15, Episode 40 of the Bitcoin Takeover podcast. This is a very special one because it's the first time when we are streaming this across other platforms. We already were streaming on Twitter/X, on YouTube, but now we have added Nostr so you guys can zap it. We have also added a bunch of others like Facebook and Twitch. And it's a very interesting experiment to see which platform gets most views over the next 90 minutes. The guest today is Rijndael. Rijndael is the CTO of Taproot Wizards, and I perceive Taproot Wizards as being mostly a meme factory type of organization. I don't know why they need a CTO. I don't know what they're doing out there. It's very obscure, and that's why we got Rijndael right here. So it's good to have you, Rijndael.
Yeah, thanks. Great to be here.
So tell me more about Taproot Wizards. What is this about? And don't you think that this is sort of a waste of your talent?
uh, yeah, great question. So we do a couple different things. I'd say the focus of the company is we're trying to help make Bitcoin magical. Bitcoin is already quite magical, but I think we probably think that it can be more magical. We do that in a number of ways. What people probably know us for most of all is we made two inscription collections. Inscriptions are like NFTs on Bitcoin. So we've made two collections. One of them was kind of about Bitcoin culture generally, and then the other one is really about covenants generally and about Opcat specifically. So there's a number of products and protocols and services that we think would really be useful for Bitcoiners. We're interested in building some of those. We think other people are interested in building other of those. We think Bitcoin needs something like a general purpose covenant opcode in order to do that. So right now we're spending a lot of time on research and development of Opcat specifically, but also of like protocols and services that use Opcat to do new things that either you couldn't really do before or were too difficult to do on Bitcoin. So it's like memes are definitely a big part of it, but I think we use memes as a tool to try to help Bitcoin, kind of push forward in the right direction.
Wait, so are you saying that Taproot Wizards is an attack on Bitcoin because you're trying to change Bitcoin, and obviously every attempt to improve Bitcoin is also an attack, and therefore you are evil?
I mean, that's like one interpretation of it. I'd say, we think that you know the conversation around covenants got stuck a little bit. Like people were having the same conversations kind of in a circle about covenants, and we thought that by bringing more voices into the conversation and by like having the conversation in a slightly different way, we could like move the conversation along. um Whether or not that's been successful, I think reasonable people could disagree about, but yeah, I think that there's a lot of people who want additional expressiveness in Bitcoin, usually to do something covenanty. We're one of them, and we're advocating for it, and we're doing a lot of R&D to kind of understand what's possible with those upgrades.
I mean, that's interesting, but at the same time, I don't know what to say. Is it really an upgrade? Are you guys free letter agents? I have heard people simultaneously call you out for being a very smart Bitcoin developer or being a spook. So I'm very torn on this issue. And while you answer to this accusation, which I just launched, could you please retweet this so more people join and know that we are doing this live?
Yeah, sure. I mean, for one thing, I'd say like being a good Bitcoin developer, for like whatever good means to you, and being a spook are not mutually exclusive. Like I would hope that the three-letter agencies would hire competent developers and they wouldn't hire like incompetent developers. So it's totally possible that I'm like a spook and a like reasonably competent developer. Um, I could sit here and tell you that I'm not a spook, but that's exactly what a spook would say. So I'll just say, yeah, I'm a spook and I'm attacking Bitcoin, and that shouldn't really matter, right? Like if the incentives in Bitcoin work out, then it shouldn't really matter if three-letter agencies are throwing developers at it. Like it should still work. Or if Bitcoin can be by a small number of developers funded by three-letter agencies, then like Bitcoin probably isn't going to stand up to other like hard government attack anyway.
Interesting. So, what's your background? Because we know a lot about your work since you joined Twitter as Rot13 Maxi. And
Yeah.
Rot13, for the record, is also a reference to advanced encryption, which you seem to very much like. But what did you do previously? Like, you came out of nowhere, apparently.
Yeah. So I mean, before I started really tweeting about Bitcoin stuff, my background, like my professional work, was a combination of distributed systems, security, some amount of what I would call applied cryptography, which is like not doing the math part, but saying, all right, somebody's already figured out all of the hard parts of cryptography. How do we actually like deploy this at scale and make services that people can use out of it? So some of that work, a lot of like large scale network security, a lot of very large scale infrastructure automation, which um, infrastructure problems end up kind of reducing down to distributed systems problems. So a lot of like distributed state management and making really large systems that are resilient and scalable. At the same time, I was interested in Bitcoin or doing things that were kind of Bitcoin adjacent, and then I started working kind of full time in Bitcoin a couple years ago. And before that, I just worked at large companies that usually had like really stringent like social media or like PR policies. So, the reason why I started tweeting about Bitcoin stuff as like a NIM was actually just to deal with like corporate PR policies. And yeah, I've been working in full time now in Bitcoin for golly, probably 3 or 4 years at this point. Before that, it was mostly like side of desk, little hobbyist projects, like make a little web app that accepts Bitcoin, or something that like you can pay with Lightning and get a server or something, things of that nature.
Interesting. I think it was in the other interview that you did. As far as I know, this is the second one that you do under this name, at least. And you mentioned something along the ways of having worked on a non-custodial wallet
Mm-hmm.
previously, so previous to joining Taproot Wizards.
Mm-hmm.
Can you name which wallet that was?
Yeah, I think I said it publicly. Yeah, I was working on BitKey at Block.
So BitKey is that hardware wallet by Jack Dorsey.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's from Block, which is, Jack is the CEO of Block. When people say it's like Jack Dorsey's wallet, like he wasn't, writing code for it and soldering components together, but it's the Block hardware wallet.
Oh, so how come you never told the guys that it's a bad idea to not have a screen to verify your transactions?
Uh, so at the decision, I mean, I don't want to get too much into. Sorry, my dog is like throwing up behind me right now, so I keep looking behind me. Um, so I don't want to get too much into like uh internal conversations and like roadmap and stuff. I think the general uh the idea that the team came to, that they wanted to see if it made sense, is that screens on hardware wallets only really protect against a very specific and very like narrowly defined threat, which is you have malware on your phone or on whatever the host device is that is able to show you one address and send a different address to the hardware wallet. And so that's like that's like not a threat that most people are actually going to be exposed to. Like clipboard hijacking malware is like way more common. And if you're exposed to clipboard hijacking malware, then a screen on your device isn't actually going to save you, because like, if you see the wrong address on your phone and the wrong address on your device, and you just compare the two of them together, and if they're the same and you sign, then something doing like clipboard hijacking is still going to take all of your money. The class of malware that a screen on the device specifically protects against is one where like the wallet app on your phone is targeted and will show you the legitimate address that you're sending to, but will actually sign a different transaction and then send that different transaction to your device. So that's like a very specific class of malware that has to really like target your wallet specifically, or that piece of software specifically. And the bar for writing that is quite high, and we haven't really seen it in the wild. So, one of the things that the team was looking at that they wrote about is there might be options in the future to like use other screens that you might have that have uncorrelated attack surfaces to verify transaction details, or to do that with policy. So that was the idea, that like it's like a very narrowly defined threat that you're defending against, and in order to defend against that, you have to put a bunch of complexity in front of users that they might not know what to do with. Like most users don't know, what they're looking at if you just show them transaction details and say, does this look good to you? I think what a lot of people end up doing is like you check the last, 4 digits of the address or something. And we've seen attacks where people have like done like address grinding to get the last four digits to be the same or something. So I think one of the things that project is trying to do is figure out like what are the right practical measures that make security accessible and don't just like require the user to do a bunch of things that they're going to get wrong, and that ultimately gives them like a false sense of security. I don't know if that answers your question or not.
It's a pretty good answer, but I can argue that with about $5 worth of production costs, you could have mitigated many more attacks with that one device. Because if you look at the history of hardware wallets, you're going to find that the first ledger made the same assumptions, that they don't need a screen. And they ended up releasing all of their subsequent versions with a screen. The first Bitbox also did not have a screen, and they ended up releasing the Bitbox 02 just to allow the user to verify transactions. So I don't think it's a very I don't know, maybe that the screen seemed like something antiquated from the design perspective. The way in which I view the BitKey is that they approach hardware wallets with this idea that they should disrupt what already exists on the market and start with a new mindset. And I don't think that the screen is such an obstacle in your way and such a factor that increases the production cost of the device and therefore makes it more expensive for the consumer. I think it's a net benefit, and I don't see why it was not included.
Yeah, I mean, I think the other thing that's and like you should really, like, the BitKey team likes feedback. I would definitely send your feedback to that team. I think, my mental model for the BitKey is that it's not the same kind of device as a general purpose hardware wallet. Like I kind of see it as being more of a replacement for a seed phrase. So like I think, a BitKey plus the BitKey app on your phone is kind of between a single sig phone wallet and like having three cold cards or ledgers or whatever. Like it's not the same level of security as either of those things. I think it's kind of between it. I think in the fullness of time, there probably will end up being some out of band transaction detail verification mechanism, but I think figuring out exactly what that looks like for the kinds of customers that they're serving is difficult, and I think it's a nuanced thing. And like, I'm also not on that team anymore, so I don't really want to comment on like what they may or may not be doing. Like, it's not fair for me to do.
Yeah, maybe I should get an interview with someone from BitKey. Anyway, we are 15 minutes into the episode, which means I have to present some ads. I think today is the last day when you can coin join with Wasabi Wallet with the ZK Snacks coordinator, so you better do that for reasons that you know much better than me. And I don't think you're gonna have the same amount of liquidity on a coin join coordinator for a long time. So you better FOMO. The fees are still low. You better do that, or else you're gonna regret this. And I also have to present this new sponsor of the show, which is called Sideshift.ai, which is this place where, let's say that you got paid for some reason in stable coins and you're pissed off and you're like, what should I do with this trusted shitcoin? It's supposed to be backed 1-to-1 by something else. I don't know if it's backed. I don't want to hold on to it. What should I do with it? I don't want to exchange it for fiat. So you can go to Sideshift.ai. There is no sign up required. There is no KYC that's needed. You just type your Bitcoin address or whatever you want to exchange your stable coins for, and you're gonna do this shift for a fee which is pretty low, and it's very convenient because it's without KYC. So check out Sideshift.ai. You can swap between Bitcoin and whatever shitcoin you think you want to speculate on, or you can exchange your shitcoins for Bitcoin. I'm not gonna judge what you're gonna do with it, but it's pretty cool. Anyway, did you ever use Sideshift or Wasabi?
Yeah, I used both of them. The last time I used Sideshift was, I think it was like a year or two ago. I was spending a lot of time playing with Liquid, and for a while, Sideshift was like the best way to get Bitcoin between kind of L1 and Liquid. And then I played with Wasabi before Wasabi 2, so when it was still like Wasabi 1 dot whatever. Yeah, I don't know. I thought it was nice.
Oh, so you haven't actually tried the Wabi Sabi coin joins, which have more than 150 inputs? And
No, I haven't. I moved from Wasabi to Join Market for a while, and then I stopped coin joining things.
okay, I guess you started spending your Bitcoin on inscriptions.
Yeah, and like that, or I also I had this thought that if you buy KYC Bitcoin, coin join it and throw it in a hardware wallet, and then in the future you want to do something with it, like, I don't know what the state of Chainalysis is going to be by the time I actually want to move it. So using coin join methods that are like currently being scrutinized a lot, and then not having any way of like undoing that in the future, was something that I just didn't have a lot of utility for. Like, I'm not somebody who like has to coin join in order to use my Bitcoin. So, if I need to coin join or coin swap or do something else in the future, I'll do it in the future. But I don't need to like preemptively do it now. It's just, either it's going to sit in cold storage, or I'm going to use it on Lightning, or I'm going to use it for inscriptions. And, I'll do transactions with it like when I need to do it. But I didn't see the need to like preemptively coin join my stuff.
Okay, I like to take pride in the fact that this show has the smartest listeners, and Fiat Jeff actually has two questions for you, and he
Oh,
posted them on Noster because he's such an OG. Of
yeah.
course, he created the protocol, so why not? So he said, ask him about using Mercury state chains to transfer ordinals. What do you think about that?
I think it's a really cool idea that I would love to see people play with. So the idea with a state chain is you or like Mercury is the current like best implementation of this, but the idea is that you um you know send some Bitcoin into the state chain, and it creates this like state coin. And the idea is that there's a entity called an SP. I think it stands for service provider, and the coin is encumbered by what's basically like a 2 of 2 multisig with like you and the SP. And then if I want to send this coin to Vlad, then me and the SP sort of sign it over, and then Vlad can send it to somebody else by like signing it over. And the SP maintains this like proof of publication ledger to prevent people from double spending, but you can do a bunch of off-chain transfers of this UTXO, and then you like exit the coin by actually spending it on chain. And what's cool is you're kind of always moving a whole UTXO around. Like you're not really joining and splitting these coins. You're moving them around atomically. So it actually fits the ordinals model really, really well, because you can imagine, sending some inscription into a state chain, and then you have that inscription and you can pass it around off chain with this like SP assumption, and then you can withdraw it and you get the same ordinal out. So it actually fits really, really well. I know a few people who have talked about looking into it. They were talking about that before. So Mercury went from being Mercury Wallet to Mercury Layer, which is way more like an API now. So I think people were looking at it before that transition happened, and I probably need to like revisit it now that Mercury Layer is out in the world. But it's a super cool idea.
I did have an interview with Nicholas Gregory and his
Yeah,
friend Tom, who is the CTO at Mercury Layer. It's pretty cool. Go check that out.
it's really cool. Yeah, and the new, I don't know all the details, but I think they're doing like blinded signatures now in Mercury Layer, so the SP knows less about the coins that it's signing for, which makes it harder for them to censor you, which is great.
Yeah, they're a very cool team. I have no
Yeah,
idea why they're so underrated. They don't get much credit. Maybe they should start memeing their work with cats or whatever.
yeah, I think they should absolutely meme it more. They're an insanely smart team, and they're doing like really interesting stuff. I think it's probably the best L2 that's not Lightning. It's like the only other L2 that's not Lightning right now.
Oh, we do have rootstock. But anyway,
I,
speaking of L2s, there's
yeah,
another
I don't know. I
question
think
by
all the
Fiat Jeff. He
that's fun.
says, ask him why he thinks drive chains are the ultimate Bitcoin upgrade with no risks and 100x scaling privacy utility upsides.
That's really funny. I don't think that. I think Fiat Jeff thinks that, and he wants me to argue about it. I mean, I don't know. I think drive chains. I I don't think drive chains end up getting a ton of usage if there's a better alternative available. Like I think most people don't actually want hash rate escrow. I think most miners don't want hash rate escrow for like compliant reasons. Um, the other thing is, with like the BIP420 style drive chains, you need 50% plus one block of the hash rate to kind of like vote yes to pass a sidechain withdrawal, but 25% of the hash rate plus one block can vote no and block any sidechain withdrawal forever. And we currently have, two pools that have more than 25% of the hash rate. So I think if you wanted to go and build like the Zcash sidechain with drive chains, then I think it would be really trivial for like a government agency to go to Foundry or somebody and say, hey, you're going to vote no on all these sidechain withdrawals unless you KYC all of the withdrawals. So I think it's like that's a problem. I think people probably don't want a bridge that takes 6 months to resolve. I think a lot of miners probably don't want to questionably be custodians of sidechain funds. I think that there's been a ton of work on ZKPs over the last couple of years, and bridges that are secured by like a validity proof or something have a much better set of trade-offs than hash rate escrow. So I don't know. I think drive chains were a really great idea like 10 years ago, but I think in 2024, 2025, if you have other ways of bridging coins in and out of L1 Bitcoin, I think the market's going to pick other ways.
Oh man, that's harsh. I think this show is very aspirational in the sense that it promotes two different but also hopeful scaling solutions for Bitcoin.
Okay.
So I have a message from Paul Sztorc, and
Yeah.
yeah, and this show is also sponsored by Layer 2 Labs, so I got to mention
Cool.
that. But Paul
Hey,
Sztorc,
I think they're great. I think Paul's great. Like I'm happy to talk to Paul about drive chains anytime.
so he says, is Blockstream going downstream? Has RGB getting you down and brown? After a long day of listening to Peter McRetard, why not feel something for a change? Feel alive. Join Layer 2 Labs and make everyone feel sad and frustrated and angry. Our next ritual is at 3 a.m. in the ancient forest. See you there. I'm Paul Sztorc and I approve this message. Or do I?
That's great. I
So,
think Paul needs to say that message 13,000 times, and then people will get it.
yeah, all we have to do is count to 13,000, right?
That's right.
But this message says that Layer 2 Labs is making everyone feel sad and angry and frustrated. Isn't that what Taproot Wizard does? Wizards,
No,
not wizard.
I don't think we make people feel sad and angry and frustrated. I think I don't know. I think we make things fun and interesting. I also don't think Layer 2 Labs makes people sad and frustrated and angry. Like their meme game has gotten a lot better lately. It's still not quite where it needs to be, but it's getting better.
I mean, it's not all
I don't
about
know. What
memes,
do you
right?
think? Like, do you think we made people sad and angry and despondent? I don't think so.
I mean, before Giacomo blocked me, I used to see a lot of that, a lot of cope, a lot of hate against Udi for some reason. For some reason, you have this guy, Udi Wertheimer. He was on this
Mm-hmm.
show in season 2, which was almost 5 years ago or more.
Yeah.
I had him when he was still a very nice Bitcoin maximalist. He was not expressing any unpopular opinion. But for some reason, now he is the personification of everything evil. If you see this inscription that's 4 megabytes large in size, people are going to blame Udi. If you see a lot of
Yeah.
BRC tokens being minted, it's Udi's fault. For some reason,
Yeah.
he became the devil, And he is also part of your team, right?
Yeah, it's really funny. Like the number of things that people kind of lay at our feet is impressive. I've seen a lot of people claim that we you know, like went and raised a bunch of money to just spam the blockchain with BRC20s for 6 months or 12 months or however long it was. And then I see people simultaneously claim that like we spent all of our money on BRC20s, but then also like we're making all this money by scamming people. I don't know how those things are both true at the same time. It's pretty impressive. Like if you listen to some of the talking heads on Twitter, we are responsible for like all of the blockchain activity for the last 12 months, like according to some people, which like doesn't make any sense. Like I don't understand what people think the business model is of like if you believe that there's no market for any of this stuff, then what's the business model for creating 12 months worth of it? Like I guess just because Udi's evil, like I don't really understand what the
Of
logic
course,
is
he's
there.
funded by the Mossad, right? And
Yeah,
he
that's right.
got
It's
this
it's
money
it's the
from some.
Mossad and the Chinese government, and I'm trying to remember who else. Who else were allegedly funded by? Oh,
Well,
the Ethereum Foundation. That was another one. Trying to remember who else. I had a bunch of people ask if we had taken money from Craig Wright, which is really funny. Um, yeah, I don't know. A lot of people.
of course, so you're in the business of losing money, of course. You're
Well,
using
yeah,
this
because
just to
we're
make.
spending it all on all these BRC20s. That's right.
Exactly.
Yeah.
You're making people pay more for their honest financial transactions.
Yeah. The whole point is, yeah, when I joined the company, I went and met my WEF handler. It's great. They're right across the street from our Mossad office, and we talked about how we were going to raise transaction fees on Bitcoin so that people in El Salvador can't pay for pupusas on chain. That was that's the whole plan.
Yeah, that worked because El Salvador
Yeah.
is using custodial Lightning.
Yeah. Yep. And it's now we're trying to push for covenants to do more, non-custodial Bitcoin activity on other layer twos, and that's evil too, because like once we've completely destroyed L1, us trying to advocate for people building less interactive non-custodial L2s is now evil.
Yeah, and you mentioned the C word, the magic C word, which seems to be
That's
so
right.
divisive. Covenants.
Yeah.
I have to present
Oh, I
this
thought you were going to say cat.
advertisement. No, 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 no.
Yeah.
Covenants. I gotta present this advertisement from Starkware, which is this ZK rollup, very advanced cryptographic system. I did an interview with Ellie Ben Sasson, which you can listen as part of this season, and you can understand more about how this works. The idea behind it is that it's built on Ethereum right now, and they want to bring it to Bitcoin, but they can't bring it to Bitcoin without Opcat. So the message is activate Opcat so we can have more fun cryptographic stuff on Bitcoin, which some people are going to hate, but I think is very interesting from a scalability and privacy point of view.
Totally agree. Yeah, I'm a huge, I mean, yeah, like I'm a huge fan of all the work that's been done in Starks specifically, but other proof systems as well over the last couple of years. I I choose to work on Bitcoin and to focus on Bitcoin, but I'm happy that other networks have been willing to fund the research into making Starks actually practical. Like the thing that's really cool about Starks, and I think I heard you guys talk about this in your episode. But one of the things that's really cool is that there's no new cryptographic assumptions beyond what's already in Bitcoin. Like snarks are really cool. They give you really succinct proofs, but they rely on like elliptic curve pairings and a bunch of like other kind of more exotic cryptography. Starks really only rely on having a good hash function, and like we have that in Bitcoin. Like we already assume that SHA-256 is good. So the thing that's really appealing about a Stark proof is that what you there's like two things that are like kind of cool and appealing. One of them is for like the off chain bit. If you can go and do a bunch of transactions off chain and then generate a proof that all those transactions were valid and be able to encumber an on-chain UTXO with that with a check that that proof is valid, then we can like move a bunch of transaction activity off chain, still do it in a very verifiable way that's like very inexpensive to verify. And then the other thing that's really appealing about Starks is, and I know that you guys talked about this, is like reducing IBD, right? Like
Mm-hmm.
if instead of downloading every single block from Genesis until now, if you can download a snapshot of the UTXO set and a proof that all the blocks from Genesis until your IBD snapshot were all valid, then you could have a cell phone that has a fully validating Bitcoin node on it, and you just like download an app, you download a couple megabytes of proof data, and like now you've got a fully validated Bitcoin node. And I think that's super exciting.
I mean, you gotta think about it because right now, when you use a mobile wallet, most likely you're not connecting to your node unless you know how
Yeah.
to set up an Electrum server. Because
Mm-hmm.
most wallets use this SPV system, which is based on Electrum. And you're gonna most likely connect to the developer's Electrum server. They're going to collect data about how you use the wallet. It's not ideal. It's nice for what it is, but we should move on from this model. Just imagine a system where you just download this zero knowledge proof within seconds, and then you're not going to have to rely on somebody else's blockchain, on somebody else's node. You just have your own from
Mm-hmm.
this point onwards, and it just works within seconds. It solves a lot of the scalability concerns that we have. It solves all of the concern trolling about making the blockchain too large because
Mm-hmm.
third world countries will not be able to validate a full node to sync up. I mean, it's so cool. It's exactly the holy grail of self custody to be able to run your own full node within seconds without trusting a third party. You just trust cryptography as opposed to another person.
Yeah. No, it's massive. I think it would be super useful. It would expand the number of places that we can run fully validating Bitcoin nodes. So cell phones, low power hardware, embedded devices, like, we could run more nodes in more places, which would be great. And then, on the flip side, and there's also just like the layer 2 thing of, being able to say, in order to move this UTXO, you have to satisfy some set of conditions that maybe aren't expressible in Bitcoin script. Like Bitcoin script is very limiting. So if you want to express like more complex sequences of transactions or more complex multi-party contracts or payment systems, you'd like to be able to implement that off chain and then just have like a really cheap and efficient check, to unlock the UTXO that says, oh yeah, all this other stuff over there that we delegated to was correct, and not have to have every full node validate all the details of that contract.
Yeah, and all we have to do is just activate Opcat, and we can have that. It's pretty incredible.
Yeah, or something like that. Yeah, I think there's a bunch of folks working on trying to do a Sztorc verifier only using Opcat. It looks like it's going to work, but it's going to be big. So you might still be validating the proof in like a optimistic style, where like you spend the coins, and then there's kind of a challenge period, and during that challenge period, somebody can kind of force you to reveal your proof, and then you actually go through and validate it. It would be really great to be able to get a Sztorc verifier that's small enough to fit in a single transaction and be able to just do it in like one shot. We might be able to do that with just Opcat, or we might need some other opcodes as well. But once we have Opcat, we should be able to do pretty good Sztorc verification on Bitcoin, and we should be able to build more interesting, like optimistic spending things. We actually made an illustrated children's book about that called CatVM. If you go to catvm.org, it's like a PDF, and it's about using Opcat to do a combination of like a recursively defined state machine, like a recursive covenant state machine, and then Merkle tree verification. And you can use those things to build like a interactive challenge response protocol for doing like optimistic withdrawals of smart contracts, which is super cool.
Yeah,
So we've done NFTs, and we also did a children's book about smart contracts.
that's very interesting that you do children's book, because you're dealing with people who say that Bitcoin should not be changed under any circumstances. It's already perfect money. You should not change anything just because they can afford to use it, and it's perfectly fine for their use cases. It should be the same for the rest of the world. And what else? I mean, the average person does not understand the argument for new cryptography. They will say Satoshi was a god who descended upon humans and brought us this invention which is already perfect, and every other attempt is shitcoiny. If it was tried on Ethereum before Bitcoin, then it's a shitcoin. It's shitcoin tech.
Yeah.
You should not bring that to Bitcoin.
Yeah, I mean, so that argument falls apart in a bunch of places. Like, for one thing, we've changed Bitcoin a bunch since the first release, and I think we've made it better. Bitcoin wasn't perfect, isn't perfect. There's this meme that like we should stop changing Bitcoin and we should scale it in layers. I think the people who say that don't understand what it takes to try to build new layers on top of Bitcoin. And at the end of the day, like if you want to have new layers that are not fully custodial, then I think you need more expressive scripting in Bitcoin to be able to settle those layer twos or layer threes back down into layer one. Like there's not enough block space for everybody in the world to have their own lightning channel. Like there's not. And so we can't just say like, all right, well, we're going to get more people to use lightning. It caps the total number of people that can have non-custodial Bitcoin. I think there, to your point, there's a lot of people who feel like I've already got my bag, I'm all set. I'll build my fiefdom. Like I have my Bitcoin. I'm not a feudal lord yet, but I think if we actually want more people to be able to use Bitcoin non-custodially, then we have to be able to build systems that can handle lots of users off chain, but still give you the ability to unilaterally spend your Bitcoin on chain. And for that, we need some upgrades to L1 Bitcoin. There's just like no two ways about it.
Yeah, and it's interesting that these zero knowledge proofs are making transactions smaller so that we can fit more of them into the same small blocks. Or else, if we increase the block size ever, we're still going to get more transactions, more data that is much smaller.
Yeah, I think that's right. Like a good framing of this that I think a lot of people have thrown around. Like I know Brandon Black has said this a bunch of times is like increasing transaction density. I think Casey Rotomore said that a bunch of times too. Like the move is that we need to fit more transactions into smaller number of V bytes, and CKPs are a good mechanism, but also just, you know, if we could do, some people really love Lightning. I think channel based constructs are just tricky economically, but if we can make the economics work, being able to have like multi-party Lightning channels, like with more than two ends of it, right? So something like a Lightning channel with lots of users in it, like maybe that would be better. Um, I'm a big fan of like ZKP constructions that don't look like channels, but I think, you know, we're gonna have to try a bunch of different things technically and economically to figure out what works, and it's kind of hard to design this stuff in a vacuum.
Yeah, you said something about Lightning as if other
Mm-hmm.
people like it but you don't. What's your opinion on the Lightning network?
I think so. I like Lightning is it's the Lightning network is impressive. It's impressive that it works as well as it does. The amount of work that people have put into it has been insane, and like people have done a lot of good work to make it as reliable kind of through the core of the network as it is. I think for a while Lightning was sold uh generally as the end user payment solution. And I think like the liquidity requirements and the interactivity requirements in Lightning make it really hard to build non-custodial end user payments. Like on your phone, if you want to have a phone wallet that can receive Lightning, you've got this offline receive problem of like you put your phone to sleep and the app no longer gets enough CPU time to settle HTLCs. And so like you have to come online in order to like receive Lightning. A bunch of people are working on that problem where there's going to be a kind of like a messaging protocol between you and your LSP, where your LSP can kind of like hold your HTLC, and then when your phone comes online, it messages the LSP and says, "Hey, I'm online now," and you get the payment. But I think that there's just a long tail of problems like that make it difficult to do non-custodial uh, end user payments. And then the other part of it's just like the liquidity requirements I think are hard. Like, you know, you need to kind of have money before you can receive money. And I think when you put those two things together, like I'm skeptical that end users are going to have, you know, non-custodial Lightning wallets on their phones all over the place. I think Lightning makes sense for settlement like between institutions, you know, between if you're going to use like Chaumy and eCash, if that fits your threat model and you are comfortable with eCash, maybe between eCash mints. If you're running a server that's online all the time, I think like Lightning makes sense. Like Lightning, like settlement between counterparties that need to settle frequently makes a ton of sense to me, and I think that the Lightning network is very good at that. In terms of like hey, I just want to send you money, like go install this app. I think a lot of people have better options than Lightning. And I think that that's part of why Lightning hasn't really found a ton of product market fit as end user payments. I think it's just too hard. And it's also just tough on users. Like push payments are a different model for subscriptions and billing. Most people use payment systems where like the merchant pays the fee and the user doesn't pay the fee. And so trying to get normies to use like a push payment system that has liquidity requirements, liveness requirements, and where they're paying the fees, as opposed to using like a custodial payment system, I think is just a tough hill to climb.
Yeah, and I was just checking out. So when I was looking down, I was checking out my phone. There's this Nostr streaming application. I gotta tell you the name. It's called zap.stream. I'm giving it the first try right now to see if people actually tune in. So far, I didn't get any interactions. It's interesting in the sense that you pay by the minute when you stream, and you hope that somebody else is gonna pay you for the stream that you're doing. So far,
Yeah.
I'm at a loss. I'm not making any money. But I
Yeah.
also gotta read some messages from the chat because we have this guy AC who posted a bunch of wizard emojis and then
You
laughing
did like
emojis.
wizards and a cat, I think.
Yeah, and
There's a
said
bunch of
meow
stuff.
and said something about hidden symbolism, which is on point. I don't know. Does this mean 666 or Satan or whatever with an emoji?
Oh,
I don't know.
I thought it just meant okay. Like, I don't know.
And there's Terry M who says, "What did your girlfriend make you for breakfast?" It was guacamole bread with eggs. Thank you for being concerned
Nice.
about it.
Nice.
And he also says, "SBTC through Stacks, your thoughts and opinions, please." Yeah, I don't think Stacks gets a lot of credit or mentions.
Yeah, I don't really use Stacks too much. I looked at it a while ago because I am a fan of Lisp. So like anybody doing blockchain stuff with Lisp, I take a look at, but I don't have strong opinions about Stacks one way or another.
I do remember when it was called Blockstack, and it
Yeah, that was
was
a while
this,
ago.
yeah, it was vaguely related to Bitcoin at the time. It still had its own token, and then it emerged as this quote-unquote layer 2. It's a very Silicon Valley slash Ethereum style of layer 2 that's added on Bitcoin. It does have some users, so I'm not gonna hate on it for bringing more people to Bitcoin. I just don't get it, you know? I don't really understand what's the point of it.
Yeah. Yeah, it's interesting. Like I think the analogy that somebody made to me that made some sense, and I'm guessing a lot of the audience probably won't get this because it's like an Ethereum reference, but it's like Stacks is kind of like the Polygon for Bitcoin. I'm not saying that that's like a good or that's true or not, but I thought that was like an analogy that helped kind of categorize it for me. Um, like there's some connections to Bitcoin. I don't know if it's changed with their most recent upgrade, but like they were anchoring to Bitcoin with their proof of transfer mechanism. If you were staking on on their network, then like you got some Bitcoin, and then their smart contracting language has a function that lets you get Bitcoin state. So if you want to like do a Stacks transaction, only if some UTXO has been spent on L1 Bitcoin, then that's like a thing that you can do. So, I think in theory you can build like interesting things where you make a transaction on Bitcoin, then a whole bunch of stuff happens over on Stacks. I haven't seen any of that stuff, and I haven't used it, so I don't have an opinion on it. But it's cool to build stuff that watches Bitcoin and then reacts to it, right? Like we were talking about Nostr. The first thing I did on Nostr was I wrote a little bot that every time a Bitcoin block gets confirmed, it would go through and add up the value of all the outputs in the block and then say, here's how much Bitcoin got transferred this block. And it would like, send it out as a Nostr note. I called it MOE bot. It's like medium of exchange bot. And I was trying to have, like just this thing on Nostr that would say like, here's how much value Bitcoin just settled in 10 minutes. And it's just fun to write software that looks at a Bitcoin node, grabs block data, and does stuff with it. I love anything like that.
You did describe Stacks as some sort of Polygon for Bitcoin, but I do disagree because Polygon is funded by Tether slash Bitfinex, whichever. I don't know the difference between the two entities, but I think Polygon has more respect in the Ethereum ecosystem as opposed to Stacks. So from a reputation perspective, at least, it's very different. Maybe from a business perspective, it's similar. But what I was going to ask you next is, you mentioned Liquid and how you were trading with Sideshift between LBTC and BTC. And you also spoke a little bit about Lightning. And what I want to ask you is, which one of them do you think has a brighter future in Bitcoin? Is it Liquid? Is it Lightning? Which one do you think we will still be talking about in 10 years?
Probably Lightning. Yeah, I think Liquid has a hard problem around bootstrapping. Like they've got this cold start problem of um, there's not really much to do in Liquid. Like you can't actually do very much with like Liquid Bitcoin once you have it. And so what you want to get to is you want to get to a place where there's like things to do on your network, so users come in to use the network, and then because users are there, that attracts more developers and entrepreneurs to build more stuff. And then that more now there's more stuff, and that pulls in more capital and users, and then those more capital and users pull in more developers and entrepreneurs, and you get this like nice flywheel, this like virtuous cycle. Kickstarting that flywheel is really hard, and I think that's like the problem that Liquid needs to solve. And I don't think they've done it, and I don't see a lot of evidence that they're like about to do it. Coincidentally, that's part of why I decided to work full time on a company that operates in Ordinals, right? Because like I saw Ordinals as having enough energy to kickstart that flywheel. Because what happened was when Ordinals trading kind of, or when Inscriptions sort of first hit the market, it was really really quiet for a few weeks, and then a huge rush of users kind of rushed into Inscriptions, and people were trading on literal spreadsheets in Discord channels. So it was like super trusted. You'd go into a Discord channel and you'd say like, okay, this moderator is going to like run a spreadsheet to keep track of these trades, and it was like very janky. But there were so many people doing it that a bunch of wallet developers from other ecosystems like Stacks said, "Oh shit, we can go build a wallet here and have users." So people started, porting wallets over to support Ordinals. Somebody made a marketplace, and now that there's like a wallet and a marketplace, it's easier for more users to get involved. And so then more users come in. There's more capital in the system. There's more trading volume. So then more wallets and marketplaces started coming in. And within, a single digit number of months, we went from spreadsheet trading to the hat that I'm wearing right now. It's from a company called Liquidium. I have no affiliation with them. I like the team. Um, they're doing a non-custodial lending system where like if you have an ordinal and you want to borrow Bitcoin against it, they use DLCs, like discrete log contracts, to do non-custodial on-chain lending against ordinals. And so we've got like borrow lend markets, there's non-custodial trading, there's a bunch of wallet support. People are building like other applications on top of it. And so they've got.
Hello? I think I lost you for a minute, or at least a few seconds. It says that your connection is lost for some reason. Anyway, until he comes back, and I hope he does, I'm gonna let him know in a message that he dropped out.
Hey, do you hear me now?
Yeah, you're back.
Okay, that was really weird.
Yeah, turn off your video, please.
Yeah, I'll do that. So yeah, I was just saying that like they were able to that community was able to kind of kickstart this flywheel, and now it's kind of running on its own. And I think if you build a whole new network, you have to kind of do that. And so I think Lightning, has a better time, and so I think it's going to be more likely to stick around in 10 years.
Yeah, I'm happy you're back because I was going to freak out a bit. The guy in the chat, there's someone named Test who said RIP, rest in peace. And AC also said that SBTC will soon be non-custodial with 5-second transaction times. I don't know, buddy. We'll see about that.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. Like people can claim whatever they want. Like we'll see what chips.
Michael Tidwell, he's the organizer of TabConf. He's also watching this. I just want to give you a shout out, Michael. He told me that the stream on Twitch is bugged.
Thanks to Dwell.
And he also said, you realize you are never showing his video, right? Yeah, that's the point.
Yeah, I'm a cat. I'm a cat on the internet talking about opcodes.
And let me read another ad. I'm not sure if you retweeted this video. You retweeted my tweet about the interview, but you did not retweet the live stream, which is why we only had like 257 views so far. And I feel bummed out right now. Not enough people know that this is happening. So please retweet. And in the meantime, I'm going to tell you about hodling.ch, which is a service from Switzerland that helps you with your self-custody. So if you own a lot of Bitcoin, or for some reason you're part of a company that decided to add Bitcoin to its balance sheet, and you don't know how to manage the keys in a multi-sig situation, then you go to these guys from hodling.ch, and they're going to advise you on which hardware wallets you should choose, what kind of setup you should make for yourself, and how to minimize the risks of your setup. They don't hold any keys. They only charge you for their consultancy service. And they're based in Switzerland, which means that you get more privacy out of this service. And if you're interested in this for whatever reason, go to hodling.ch. And that's the ad. Thank you, Michael, for being concerned about my stream. I hope you're listening to this, and I hope I'll see you in Atlanta this year. And now let's talk about covenants, because I feel like we scratched the surface with Opcat, which is not a covenant opcode, but it can become something that can create covenants.
Mm-hmm.
I think there's this ongoing battle between CTV and versions of CTV, because people said, okay, CTV at first it was evil, right? We don't want that. It can be used for evil stuff, like locking funds with custodians and stealing and whatever. And then they decided that it's useful. But when they decided that it's useful, they said it's just not powerful enough. So they made stuff like lenhance, or there was another one, TX hash, yeah. And all of these are based on CTV, but they're like expansions of it. And it seems like every time there's a new proposal, there's some advocacy for it, but the message gets diluted. We don't get the same, I guess, how should I put it, conviction for a certain proposal. And it almost seems like an attack, because at this point we seem to agree that Bitcoin needs to upgrade somehow, but we're not going to agree on how it's going to upgrade. And that's detrimental, I guess, to the long-term health of the project.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, there's kind of like the CTV family of covenant proposals. There have been a bunch of other ones, like there's another idea called tap leaf update verify. There's a whole bunch. Cat can be used to implement covenants. You can do other stuff with cat too. Cat is really basic, right? Like you take two elements on the stack, you concatenate them together, and you push it back on the stack. It's like super, super simple. But there's kind of a trick with Schnorr signatures where you can basically use cat and a specially crafted Schnorr signature to get elements of the transaction onto the stack. And then you can do other script operations with them. So you can like check that an output is going to a particular address, or you can check that an input has a particular amount, or do kind of other like more interesting introspection. I think we being Taproot Wizards, like there's a set of capabilities that we think that we think people building on Bitcoin want. Like we want them, and then lots of people that we've talked to, a lot of stakeholders trying to build lots of different things, on and with Bitcoin. And there's kind of a common set of things that everybody seems to be asking for. And so we looked at, what are the proposals out there that meet those needs, and then what do we think is the most likely to actually get activated? Because you can have like the best proposal in the world, but if nobody gets behind it or is willing to advocate for it, then it doesn't really matter. And we thought that Cat would have the best chance of kind of getting through the consensus building exercise, right? Because like it's a very simple opcode. Like you can explain it in a song. It's like 8 lines of code, so it's very easy to review. Like some proposals that people have are just like these massive amounts of really complex code. Cat is like very, very simple. So we thought that between those things, and then a lot of people that we talk to that are advocating for other covenant opcodes would say, yeah, well, like I really want proposal X, or if we had Cat, I could kind of make do with it. So, we kind of looked at all of that and decided that Cat was going to be the most likely thing to happen. And then, what we saw is there's been almost just a miscommunication between the Bitcoin development community and like the broader Bitcoin community. Like I think when the average Bitcoin holder sees people argue about CTV or TX hash, they see that argument and they think like, oh wow, there's like a really serious disagreement here. The devs don't really know like what we should be doing. And also, I think a lot of times people feel like they just like need to pick a side, like whether they do or not. Like they've got to choose one and then be against the other. Part of it is just like the format of Twitter. Part of it is just people want something to cheer for, and so CTV and TX hash are kind of equivalent. There's some differences, but you can like upgrade CTV or lock down TX hash and make them identical to one another. And so like I think a lot of the conversation has just kind of gotten stalled where there's some old FUD about covenants being really bad and dangerous for Bitcoin. There's kind of a group of developers who have been having like the same arguments kind of back and forth for a couple of years, and things kind of got stuck. And so what we've been trying to do with Cat is we think it's actually a good upgrade. We think that people haven't spent the time to understand it and why it would be kind of a no-brainer upgrade. And so we're trying to help people learn about it in a really accessible and fun way. So that's there's been a lot we've either made ourselves or had our community help make a lot of like memes and educational content about Cat, and we're just trying to like have people learn about it so that we can decide whether or not we want to activate it.
Yeah, so when I interviewed Andrew Polstra, I was super surprised to see that he is an advocate of Opcat.
Mm-hmm.
And I did know prior to the interview that the Liquid sidechain, or the Federation, call it whatever you want, also
Sure.
activated CAT. And also BCH, Bcash, or Bitcoin Cash, or whatever, has
Yep.
Opcat activated. So there's an actual bounty out there. It's on a mainnet. You can actually try to play with it. You can break it. You can see if the FUD is legit, and if there's anything evil that you can do to Bcash if you hate it so much. And if you can't, then I guess you should think more carefully about
Mm-hmm.
whether or not these people are evil, Because I think in the mind of the average Luke Dash Jr. and Giacomo Zucco follower, the association that they make is that, okay, Udi Wertheimer is evil, and Udi Wertheimer wants Bitcoin to activate Opcat, and Udi Wertheimer even created BIP420 as this proposal for Opcat. Therefore, from all of these statements, which they deem as being true, they come to the conclusion that Opcat is evil because it's being pushed by Udi.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of like there's kind of a funny thing in there. Well, so for one thing, the current BIP to activate Opcat, we actually had nothing to do with. So two developers named Ethan and Armin, wrote the BIP. I think Armin wrote most of the code. And I say most of, like it's very small. Like and to your point about it being out there and people can play with it. Opcat is also now live on Bitcoin Inquisition. So if you connect to like the kind of canonical Bitcoin Signet, you can play with Cat right now. So if you're convinced that there's like limitless ways that Opcat can destroy Bitcoin, that's actually a perfect environment to go build one of them, right? And like I've heard people throw this claim out that like Cat is going to enable unlimited amounts of like badness, but they can't come up with one concrete instantiation. Like I'm not asking you to come up with all of them, just like give me one of them. And nobody seems to be able to. But you know, on the whole like Udi likes this, so it must be bad thing. That's a really bad way to outsource your judgment, because like all that means is if Udi wants to control Bitcoin, he just has to say that he likes whatever the thing that's good is. And now you're going to like reflexively turn away from it. So I think you need to evaluate, you know, ideas and proposals, you know, regardless of who likes it. I think it's notable that you mentioned Andrew Polstra. He likes Opcat. There's Lightning developers who like Opcat. There's, you mentioned people from Starkware that like Opcat. There's, you know, lots of Bitcoin developers that are working on whether it's things like BitVM, whether it's things like Lightning, whether it's things like Inscriptions, miners. Like there's people that are working in kind of all different corners of the Bitcoin ecosystem who all say, you know, Opcat would be really useful. Like in some cases, it might not be the most optimal thing. Like there might be other constructions or other opcodes that'll let you write a smaller script to do what you want, but you can at least do it in Cat. And you know, Rusty Russell had this really great presentation at Bitcoin Plus Plus about this thing called the Script Restoration Project, which is about kind of turning on all of the deactivated opcodes and then also adding some kind of modern flavors of them to address things like Taproot. And you know, Cat is one of them. Like Opcat would be included in that. And a conversation that I think a lot of people have had is that, you know, what you could do with more opcodes in something like the Great Script Restoration is you could build these Cat enabled scripts, but now you can do it more efficiently. So like I'll give you an example. In Bitcoin right now, you can't multiply two numbers together. Multiplying numbers together is really, really useful when you're dealing with money. Like maybe you want to be able to say, I can only spend a certain percentage UTXO every 50 blocks or something, right? Like I want to have some velocity control over my money where I can't spend the whole thing at once. I can spend parts of it. You can do that by just like adding a number to itself over and over and over again. And that's like a lot of opcode that takes a lot of stack space, or you just like multiply it, right? So if we can like multiply things, then the script gets smaller. They're still possible without multiplication, but they're big and nasty and kind of hard to debug. So yeah, I mean it's I think if you're somebody who's reflexively, you know, shying away from Opcat because like certain people like it, you should probably dig more into it. Like Bitcoin is money for enemies. There's probably lots of people who use Bitcoin that you don't agree with, and like you still use Bitcoin. So I think you have to trust the incentives of the network more than any individual actor.
So, what do you think about the fact that Ocean Mining has created their own cult where they have this mining pool, they have their own node client, they have their own ideology? It almost as if they're trying to create their own fork of Bitcoin, except that they're trying to convince themselves that they're the pure ones and everyone else should be censored out of the network.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think it's gonna work well. Um, you know, I think like I'm still kind of cheering for Ocean in the long run. Like the thing that they said they were going to do that I hope that they go do is put more control over block construction in the hands of individual miners. Like I'm a big fan of Stratum V2 or other things that let individual miners, or you know, I guess mechanic would call them hashers, that let individual hashers do their own block construction. It seems like Ocean has decided that what they're going to do instead is like really focus on, you know, this like data carrier fight that they're in. I think that doesn't make a lot of sense economically, like both for them and also for Bitcoin. Trying to filter things out of mempool relay policy uh, only works if there's no economic incentive to get those transactions in the blocks. Like a thing that I've said to that team a couple times is, you've got to realize that last year Inscriptions paid over $250 million in mining fees. So if you're able to get, most of the network to implement relay filter policy that prevents inscriptions from finding their ways to miners, then you're just going to have inscription service providers making deals with individual mining pools to just send inscriptions directly to them and just skip the public mempool, and that actually drives miner centralization. So if your goal is to decentralize mining and make it so that individual miners can do their own transaction selection and have that be economically competitive, then what you want is you want every miner who like plugs an S19 into a waterfall somewhere to have access to the same flow of high fee paying transactions as every other miner. And driving things out of the public mempool is counter to that. I also think like most people don't actually care. Like inscriptions don't actually harm the network, and you know, trying to play whack-a-mole with filters doesn't actually keep these things out of blocks. Like if you run knots with data carrier size equal to 0, yeah, you're not going to relay them, but you're still going to get blocks that contain runes and inscriptions and stamps and all these things. And like they're still going to be on your node. They're still going to be on your hard drive. The only way to keep that from happening is to reject blocks that include these transactions. So like I wrote a script last year called Bitcoin Purifier that actually does this. And what it does is it's an 80-line shell script. Giacomo and Grubbles and a bunch of other people said that it was malware or that I was like attacking Bitcoin. It's an 80-line shell script. If you can't read shell, I've tested this. You can take that shell script and drop it into ChatGPT or Claude and say, what does this do? And it'll tell you exactly what it does. And it does exactly what it says on the label, which is it connects to your Bitcoin node. And every time it sees a block, it checks to see if that block has any inscriptions. And if it does, it rejects the block. And the idea is that if the economic majority of the network actually doesn't want these transactions to be in Bitcoin, then you should go and convince them to run this script. They'll fork all the inscriptions off the network, and you now have, clean, holy Bitcoin. But, it turns out that most people don't actually want to reject those blocks.
It's funny, I do remember it was called Deus Vult, if I'm not mistaken, which is Latin for God's will. And you did post that code to make fun of Luke Dash Jr.'s attempts to filter out inscriptions.
Yeah, it was to make fun of a bunch of people's attempts. Like a bunch of people were saying, these are not valid Bitcoin transactions. And I said, well, if they're not valid Bitcoin transactions, why are they on your node? And they said, well, they're exploiting a bug. And I said, fine, like here, I'll fix the bug for you. So that's what it does. The name of the script was geld.sh. Geld is a verb that means to castrate. And then, it runs, and whenever it sees a block that contains this, it would say something like scammers are putting their shit coins in the blockchain. They have to be punished. Deus Vault, and it would reject the block. The other thing that I added that it was a feature that I added to make it a lot easier for people who want to run this is if you run that script and you do -s, S for start, you can give it a block height and it won't start rejecting blocks until that block height. So if you actually wanted to organize people to do like a UASF, you could say, okay, at block 890,000, we're going to start rejecting these transactions. Everybody runs that script with -s 890,000, and you'll have kind of a coordinated flag day for when you start doing this. And like the way that Bitcoin works is if you think that the rules of Bitcoin should change, you convince the economic majority to run those new rules. Bitcoin miners need to be able to sell their coins into the deepest pool of liquidity that they can. So if you get, the economic majority of the network to run your rules, then that's Bitcoin now. And so if you genuinely believe that these are invalid transactions that are harmful to the network, that should be a very easy sell to everybody else on the network. But it's not, because like it's just not true.
Yeah, it seems like to an extent Bitcoin is much more about controlling the narrative as opposed to, I mean, Bitcoin development is more about controlling the narrative as opposed to actually writing code. And when someone actually writes code and bypasses some previously established conventions, which were mostly social but not technical,
Mm.
they're expelled for some reason. This happened to Casey Rodermore. I think he aged like 10 years in the last 1 year. He
Yeah.
looks much older. He joked about it in his Hell Money podcast and said that he's like Obama in 2008 compared to Obama in 2016.
Yeah. Yeah, he's had a wild year. Like I cannot imagine what the last year has been like for him. Like it's been crazy. Like the amount of kind of the whole range of human emotion. Like there's a lot of people who absolutely love him, and there's a lot of people who absolutely hate him. And like that's just a lot of energy to be focused at like one person. It's I don't think many people experience that.
Yeah, it sort of sucks. I did speak with him prior to the release of Runes. He was going to
Mhm.
join the show, and then for some reason he stopped responding. But I
Mm.
do hope that I'm going to get him and we can talk more about this creation of his, which I don't understand how it's different from counterparty assets. Because he has runes, right? You can create as many
Mhm.
as you want per inscription. But they use upper turn and they're very similar in design with counterparty.
Yeah, I think one. So Casey's definitely the person to talk to about this, and like you should definitely talk to Casey. He's like one of the smartest people I've ever met. Also just like a really nice guy, very happy to help explain things, and he's just like a very kind human being. But I think he also really understands Bitcoin and cryptocurrencies generally on a level that like most people never will. One of the things that I think is different about Runes against Counterparty is Runes is a much simpler protocol, which matters a lot for like implementation. Like I think one of the big lessons out of Runes and Inscriptions is that protocol simplicity matters, because that's what lets lots of people build interoperable software. Like RGB is another token protocol that lets you do tokens and lets you do collectibles on top of Bitcoin. It has like pretty much zero on-chain footprint. It's a lot more efficient. A lot of developers like it a lot more, but it is so insanely complicated that I think it's going to be hard for people to build like wallets and marketplaces and things. Runes and Inscriptions very simple, so it's a lot easier to get lots of services and like ecosystem around it. So it's simpler. I think it follows the UTXO model better than something like Counterparty does. Like Counterparty is very much an account model that uses UTXOs for message publication, but then you kind of have this index that like maps it against your account. They use that to build a lot of features. Like there's decentralized exchanges. There's like dividend functionality. You can build dispensers. Like there's lots of really cool things in Counterparty. But I think Casey very explicitly wanted to have assets follow UTXOs, because that way, like they work better for light wallets. You could potentially lift them to like Lightning or other layer twos, and also you have better incentives to not just create like lots of dust-sized UTXOs that never get cleaned up. Like that's one of the problems with BRC20s, for example, is you end up with all these like tiny inscription UTXOs that you have no incentive to spend because you just use them to publish a message, but then like the value of the token actually follows the UTXO. So it's I don't know, it's tough.
Yeah, for a lot of the people out there listening to this, maybe it sounds obscure. And
Yeah.
I think it does because for some reason the ORD protocol is still command line. And if you want to use something that's commodified, you pay a fee. But are you aware of any easy way for people to try out runes?
Well, so the reference implementation of ORD is still command line, but there's lots of really user friendly ORD wallets that run either on your desktop or like on your phone. So like there's a Bitcoin wallet called Xverse, for example, that has really good both Ordinals and rune support. Like I've got it on my phone, so I've got a bunch of like inscriptions, like in my phone, and it feels like feels like another Bitcoin wallet, but you have a tab for your collectibles and like all of your inscriptions go in there. So if you want to use the org command line, there's more that you can do there. It's really like a power user tool. But if you're just trying to like if you want to mint or trade or collect ordinals, like you can do that all from like a very accessible, easy to use like phone wallet. And then runes, like I haven't seen any wallets that are only for runes, not ordinals. All the runes wallets that I've seen are ordinals wallets that then added support for runes. So if you're going to be doing rune stuff, you're probably still using like Xverse or Leather or the OKX wallet or something like that.
So can you mention the names of the wallet once again? For some reason, your connection is not very stable.
Yeah, let me turn off my video again. So Xverse is one of them. I don't have any affiliation with like any of these wallets, but like Xverse is one. There's another one called Leather, like the material. There's another one called from OKX, like the exchange. Like they make a wallet. There's Unisat wallet. There's a whole slew of them. There's like a whole ecosystem of Ordinals wallets.
Okay, so there's a bunch of them. The one that stuck out right now when you mentioned them was Leather. Sounds interesting. I think I'm gonna check that out.
Yeah, there's a bunch of them. I used Xverse is the one that I use the most. Like I just like talked to their team and started using the wallet, and like now I've got all my stuff in it. But they all kind of like they all work. They all do the thing. And then there's been a really interesting thing that's happened, which is a lot of Ordinals power users end up using Sparrow wallet, usually with a hardware wallet for like their higher end inscriptions. So like the one that you want to keep kind of in cold storage. A lot of people are using Sparrow because Sparrow has really, really good coin control. And coin control is super important for Ordinals because it's this like optional kind of layer 2 or overlay that interprets the transaction graph in a particular way. And so order of inputs and outputs is super, super important for Ordinals. So Sparrow Wallet has some really, really useful features there. And so a lot of people are using Sparrow. And then, the Ord command line tool, it's command line, but it gives you like all of the features and it talks to Bitcoin Core and it actually uses like the Bitcoin Core wallet. So if you're like automating stuff, that's a good way to go. A lot of the software that we've done at Taproot Wizards for inscription stuff, like when we made the Quantum Cats collection, we wrote a ton of software for making a bunch of like pre-signed transactions in this acyclic graph and then signing them all. But we actually used the Ord wallet to handle like the Ordinal specific part of it, which was really helpful.
I gotta give a shout out to Reagan, who just liked our stream. He is one of the proponents of this script restoration project.
Mm-hmm.
And I did speak with him. He might join the show in a few weeks, great. Hopefully.
Yeah.
And I was going to ask you, since
I was just going to say, like, yeah, he's really tweeting a lot about script restoration. I know that he's really excited about it. He's got a lot of good thoughts on it, I think.
Yeah, he even unfollowed me, possibly because of some of my opinions. But this is fun. I'm also canceled from a couple of conferences. It's been a wild year, but
interesting.
It's getting wilder.
Yeah, I haven't been canceled from any conferences yet, but I'm sure it's coming. Maybe after the show I'll be canceled. That'll be good.
I mean, that's sort of part of the agenda of this show. I did this interview with David Bailey, the owner of BTC Media and Bitcoin Magazine, and we did this ordinal inscription on live stream where we put the thumbnail for the episode for about $600 in Bitcoin. We put it forever on the blockchain, and we challenged everyone to filter that one out. And
Excellent.
it was a lot of fun. And we even said that, okay, we're going to sell this for 3.125 BTC. And we even
Nice.
said what we're going to do with the money. We're going to buy one Supra for each one of us and give the rest to Russell Bricht.
Amazing.
Yeah, it's a lot of fun. You get canceled when you join the Bitcoin Takeover podcast. I'm sorry you were not aware of this prior to
I mean,
joining
that's fine.
the
Like I've
interview.
I've gotten canceled by enough people on Twitter. I feel like if nobody's accusing you of being an attack on Bitcoin, you're probably not doing Bitcoin right. So I think that's all part of it. And like this stuff, like you're gonna inscribe your episode thumbnail and then go try to sell it for Bitcoin and buy a Supra. Like I don't know, that's fun, right? Like Bitcoin can be fun.
Yeah, and I think I set up a discount, which was about 50% during the episode. And now I'm going to set up another discount. So if you buy this after the next halving, it's going to be 50% off. But until then, it's 3.125. Then it's going to be 1.6, whatever. I'm not going to do the math right now. But you get the point.
Yeah, I mean, so the other thing you should do, right, is maybe say you can either do it that way or you can buy it in Supras. So actually just like denominate the price in Supras and then over time, increase the price of it because there's only one of this inscription, but Toyota is going to make more Supras, every year. So, every Bitcoiner knows that like if there's something that's scarce and something that's not scarce, like the value only goes in one direction. So the Supra denominated purchasing power of your thumbnail should only ever increase over time.
I mean, yeah, there's only one of it, right?
Yeah, exactly. So like it in the limit it should be worth infinite Supras.
Anyway, it's interesting how this works and how this mentality has penetrated the culture. Penetrated, that's a nice verb. Anyway, people
Yeah.
believe in absolute scarcity and believe that everything is going to be divided by these 21 million coins. But newsflash, they're also going to be divided by these ordinal inscriptions that people seem to like.
Yeah, I mean that's the thing. Like I've got a low numbered inscription that I offered to sell to Bugatti for originally it was for two Bugattis, but now the number's up to four because they haven't taken me up on it. And like they keep making more Bugattis and there's only one of this inscription. So, eventually it's gonna be five Bugattis because like that's just how this works.
Okay, so I set up a trap and you fell into it because I said
Oh.
that these assets, the infinite amount of stuff existing in the world, is also gonna be divided by the ordinal inscriptions, which, by the way, are Satoshis. They're part of the 21 million supply. So, of
Yes, that's
course,
true.
you're gonna have that divided by, or you're gonna have everything else divided by it. So, good luck with that.
That's true. And well, and if you think about it this way, right? Like if you're able to sell that episode thumbnail for two Supras plus a nice donation for Ross's clemency fund, like that mean if you don't believe in ordinals, if you think that they're made up or if you just don't know about them, then what Vlad just did was he just sold one Satoshi for two Supras and a bunch of legal aid, right? So that just like reprices Bitcoin. Like
Yeah,
one
exactly.
Satoshi is worth that much. Yeah, I think that's great. I'm here for it.
One Satoshi should be worth like $200,000, which
Yeah.
means that one Bitcoin is gonna be like 2 trillion or whatever.
I mean, I'm perfectly okay with that math. If you can find a buyer, let me know.
Yeah. If you're listening to this, DM me and I'm gonna send you that inscription. I still have it. For whatever reason, it's a symbol, It's something that shows you that Bitcoin is not fungible. If we're gonna get privacy in Bitcoin, all of this is gonna go away. So think about it. If you want to make all of this disappear, it will not work with filtering, but it will work with confidential transactions. Make
Yeah,
that
that's
happen.
right.
Give us some ZK proofs or whatever. Give us some
Yeah,
very cool
if
cryptography.
we got CT would actually break inscriptions, and I would gladly throw all of my inscriptions in the fire if it meant we got CT tomorrow. Like that'd be great. I'm here for it.
Yeah, think about it. I was going to ask you, what else does Taproot Wizards do? And let's assume that this mission of pushing Upcat gets fulfilled, what's
Mhm.
next?
Well, so next is we've got some ideas around layer twos that we think should be in the world and should be available for Bitcoiners, and we're gonna go build them on top of Opcat. So I mentioned before we wrote a children's book called Cat VM, and it's you should really check it out. It's fun. It's a PDF. Um, I read it to my kid. If you want to read it to a small child, you have to do different voices for the different characters. Like I did like a big booming voice for the Ghost of Satoshi. But there's like these different characters, and what it describes in this book is that if you only have off-chain bridges that rely on like pre-signed transactions, then you end up having liquidity requirements that make them difficult to scale economically. If you do like multi-sig bridges, then you end up having these things that are like susceptible to operator failure or like regulatory issues or ripples. So what we really need are bridges that can let you move assets between layer one Bitcoin and a layer two that don't have these things and can instead let you do like optimistic verification of like the off-chain consensus rules. So there's a bunch of cool ideas that we have for like what those off-chain systems could look like. And we want to go build them, and so like that's one of the things that we want Opcat for. And like the thing that my North Star that I ultimately want to get to is if you think about the perfect way to send somebody Bitcoin, it's like you know they install a wallet, they get an address, and it's like a static address that they can use over time, right? It's kind of like a silent payment code, or it's something that like you could put it on your website, you can put it on your business card, you can have it be static. It's not like per transaction. You've got like a static address, and then when I send you money, it just shows up there, and it's fast, it's cheap, it's private. You didn't have to like open a channel. You don't have to worry about is there enough liquidity in the right direction between my wallet and your wallet. Like the layer one Bitcoin send and receive experience is actually very good, other than privacy and kind of like address reuse. Like anybody can download a wallet, send you an address, and people can just send you money, and there's not like all this interactivity and liquidity requirements. It would be really great if we could have that experience, but with kind of the speed and privacy that you can get in like a layer two. That's a direction that I think we want to head in the long run. There's a lot of bootstrapping and kind of cold start issues along the way. Um, I think that there's also more things that people want to be able to do with other assets, right? So like there's you've got ordinals, you've got runes, you've got like other assets that people are working on. Like Lightning Labs is working on Taproot assets. There's a bunch of people working on RGB. I think that one of the things that's nice about having other asset types on Bitcoin is it gives you things that you can use your Bitcoin for, that you can do atomic transactions with. Like you can't actually do an atomic swap with a Supra, right? Because like I can just take the keys. So having other assets that you can build exchanges and borrow lend systems and swaps and all these things for, I think is useful, and it's a way of building that ecosystem that kind of gets us towards the all Bitcoin economy that we eventually want. Like I think a lot of people have this idea that in the future we're all going to wake up and the whole economy is going to be on Bitcoin. But in order for like the economy to be on Bitcoin, you need software and financial services, and like there's like all these other systems and products and services that kind of have to be there to support the economy, and those things don't get built unless there's users actually willing to pay for them. And I think right now there's not a lot of mainstream users willing to pay for those kinds of protocols and services in like just plain Bitcoin, but they are willing to do it for like Bitcoin assets. And so I think it might be something where we can use these like Bitcoin asset economies to sort of build our way towards like a Bitcoin native economy. So that's kind of a long-winded answer. To answer your question directly, what we're going to be doing is like building, off-chain products and services that use a cat VM or cat VM like bridging mechanism to settle things to layer one Bitcoin using Opcode. That's the plan.
That's interesting. It seems like Taproot Wizards are not going away anytime soon, which is strange because people want you guys to just vanish and not appear on the stage of Bitcoin 2024 once again and dance with those stupid robes.
Yeah, I don't know why we would vanish. Like we're we haven't actually even distributed the main Taproot Wizards collection. Like we did a mint of the Quantum Cats collection, but like the Taproot Wizards haven't actually gone out yet. So we still have at least that to do, but we've also got bigger plans. I'm hiring right now, so just shameless plug. Like if you're a Bitcoin developer and you want to work on things that'll have actual users, like feel free to reach out to me. Yeah, I don't think we're going anywhere for a long time. We're definitely going to be at Bitcoin 2024. We're definitely going to be in wizard robes, and it's going to be a really good time.
Okay, how can people find you at conferences this year? How can they recognize you? Are you gonna be in your robe all the time?
Probably not all the time, but I'll probably be in it for part of the time. I'll probably be wearing a wizard hat at some point. I am giving a talk at the conference. I haven't decided what my talk is going to be. I gave a talk at Bitcoin Plus Plus in Austin. I gave a talk about OpCat and like the mechanics of how cat covenants work. Um, I'm debating whether or not I want to give a really technical talk like that. Like that talk got into how Schnorr signature construction works and how BIP420 signatures are constructed. It was a fun talk, but it was like definitely a technical talk. I'm debating if I want to do something like that or if I want to do a something more approachable and kind of more whimsical. I haven't really decided yet, but yeah, we're definitely going to be there. There's also a inscription conference like the day before, and I think about Sztorc speaking there, so we'll be around. We'll be very easy to find.
Yeah. I was going to ask you, what's your message for the people who want to soft fork to remove both Taproot and SegWit?
Does anybody actually want that?
There were a bunch of people saying this, that all hell broke loose when those two soft forks emerged, and they want to go back to the Bitcoin the way that they knew it back in the day when obviously it was not possible to do up return to add data.
Yeah, right. Or I mean, even before that, like Peter Todd had a script from before SegWit to embed arbitrary data in pay to script hash script witnesses. So like
He does do
you've been
open
able to.
timestamps, right?
Yeah, open timestamps right now, I believe, still uses an op return, but he's also like there's a really cool construction called a sign to contract where you can basically like tweak. I think you're tweaking a nonce with like the timestamp, so you're going to be able to fit data into Bitcoin transactions no matter what. The stamps project actually, they went they went whole hog, and now they're using fake pay to witness script hash outputs to embed image data. So unless you're also going to fork out pay to script hash, which I don't think anybody's going to do, and then even if you did that, you could still have like known public keys that you just tweak with image data or whatever you want. So data embedding is impossible to get rid of. If you got rid of SegWit, then you're also like throughout the Lightning Network, you're gonna have less economic density per transaction because like the reason for the witness discount is, well, there's a bunch of reasons for it, but one of the things that's nice about the witness discount is it frees up more space in the block or I guess the nice thing about the witness data structure is that it frees up more space in the block for more transactions. So if you want to have like less dense blocks with no Lightning Network, no ability to do like multi-party pre-send transaction protocols, get rid of Taproot, which Taproot is a phenomenal upgrade. Like Schnorr signatures are the bomb. Merkleized script trees are dope. Like if you actually want to get rid of those things, like I don't know why you're using Bitcoin at this point. Like there's other, there's other blockchain networks that you could use that might be more suited for your purposes, and maybe you should go use those. I mean, if you want to, the other thing is anybody can fork Bitcoin. So if you want to fork Bitcoin and actually, you know what you should do? You should use Doge. Dogecoin doesn't have SegWit. So if you're like super mad about SegWit, just go use Doge. They don't have SegWit, and they're like a top 10, market cap coin. So you're not going to have the problem bootstrapping wallets and liquidity and miners that you would have if you made your own fork. Yeah, go use Doge. That's actually the right move. I'm going to tell people that from now on.
It seems like the cat chain is telling people who don't like it to go to the dog chain, right?
That's exactly right. If you don't like the cat chain, go to the dog chain.
This is so funny. And it goes back. I think there was this viral video that I watched on Twitter with some guy who was walking down the street asking people, hey, what would you prefer? The dog with hat, which is just a dog with a hat?
Yeah,
or this
like
very complex layer 2 of Ethereum that's called I don't remember what. And it does smart contracts and blah, 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 hundreds of transactions per second. And people were like, I like the dog.
Yeah. Well, I mean, like that's part of why we thought that Cat might have an easier time in consensus building than more complex covenant opcodes, right? Is it's like, if you understand what these things do, then you can kind of have like a nuanced discussion about like, oh yeah, it's more efficient in this case, it's more efficient in that case, whatever. But also, the internet likes cats and people like cats, and sometimes people just want a thing to get behind in Signal, and like it's called cat, right? It's really easy. It's a no-brainer.
Yeah, and right now I just checked the zap.stream situation. It seems like 2 people zapped me, so thank you guys. I'm still running at a loss, but it was a lot of fun to do this also on Nostr.
Yeah.
So thank you, Tiggs and Wartime Psychopath. You guys are heroes. You made it. You proved to me that this was not a waste of time to set this up, because it was not easy to set this up. But it's fun.
What was involved in setting it up?
So basically you have to pay, first of all. You have to pay for every minute in which you're streaming. And then you have to go to the streaming software that you're using and add a custom RMTP. I think that's what it's called. So basically a different source. And you have to copy your information and also put your npub in there. And I did some testing prior to this. Seems like I got 3 viewers. It's something, I guess. I'm not accustomed to using this.
It's found it on Zap.stream. Yeah, it looks like now there's 3 viewers. Oh no, I need to mute it, otherwise I'm gonna hear it at the same time. Yeah, there we go. Huh.
It feels like I'm trying something new because there are like 5 or 6 live streams going on at the same time. There isn't much choice to be. Oh, there's someone playing Pokemon Blue. I think I would watch that. So much fun.
Let's see if we can zap this.
Yeah, I'm gonna turn into a Lightning Network bull right now just because I can zap someone playing Pokemon Blue. Anyway, how can people follow you and keep up with your work?
Twitter's probably the easiest. I'm Rot13 Maxi. It's I'm like a Rot13 maximalist on Twitter. Follow me there. Taproot Wizards and Quantum Cats are like the 2 kind of company accounts. So I retweet stuff from there a lot. But yeah, just Rot13 Maxi. I usually am talking about Cat or Covenants generally or ZK stuff. Happy to talk about any of that stuff anytime for anybody.
Yeah, and I'll see you, I guess, either in Nashville or in Atlanta if you're coming to TabConf.
Yeah, I'm going to come to both of them, so it should be a lot of fun.
Yeah, I'm gonna try to come at least to one of them because I have to get travel visa and it's not easy for me. I
Mm-hmm.
come from a place that declared war to the United States in 1940. Fun trivia.
Yeah,
And yeah,
and I'm sure the border authority hasn't forgotten,
of
right?
course
They're still
not.
mad. Yeah,
They learn history, right?
that's right.
When we actually
Absolutely.
bought F-16 airplanes from you as NATO allies, the US senators actually had to vote to determine whether or not we are a threat to the United States. So it's a lot of fun.
Interesting.
We give
Fun.
2% of our GDP to NATO, but when we have to buy airplanes, we have to go through a Senate vote.
Gotta love it.
I love my country and its leaders.
Gotta
Anyway,
love it.
I'm not going to
Yeah.
turn into a political commentator here, even though during the bear market, I did see a couple of Bitcoin podcasts switching to politics. I don't want to do that. Thank you very much, Mr. Rod13 Maxi, aka Rijndael. Did I say that correctly?
Yeah, that's perfect. Nailed
Because
it.
before that, I was reading it as Reagan Dial.
Yeah, a lot of people say that, so you've got it. The J is silent.
It was a lot of fun talking with you. I did learn a lot of stuff, and I hope that everyone listening to this found out something new. Taproot Wizards, they're not really attackers of Bitcoin. They do have a plan behind all of the memes, and you should keep an eye on what they're doing.
Awesome. Thanks for having me. It was a lot of fun.